In today's episode, I will be talking to Anuj Desai about the purpose of the comfort zone. We'll be talking about why living in the comfort zone is bad for you, which is why mavericks resist it with a passion. Listen in to hear the rest of our conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, my guest is Anuj Desai. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for coming here. I'm really excited for this conversation because I know that you used to be an in-house lawyer in the entertainment industry, and you're a veteran of startups. And then you've segued into the legal cannabis industry. So I'm kind of thinking, okay. So I'm interested if you could tell me about your story and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you for having me on. I think it's a great idea. My story, I was a lawyer for about 15 years in the entertainment space. And I was kind of approaching 40, a young family. And I looked over the horizon and I thought, I really don't want to do this for the next 30 years. And that was from two perspectives, both as a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. But also, I didn't really want to work in the media and entertainment space either. It sounds all sexy and fun. And don't get me wrong, it was certainly had fun elements to it. But it's a business much like any other, and not one that I necessarily wanted to commit the rest of my career to. So I, about 3 years ago, negotiated some voluntary redundancy from the business I was working for, with nowhere to go. And I'd got into a bit of a bad state of that previous role. I was just coasting. I had a young family, so it worked quite well from a work-life balance perspective. But I wasn't really happy there. I wasn't being challenged. I wasn't doing great work, etc. And I desperately wanted to get out. And I found myself going for these jobs that I didn't really want, only to just get out. And then I wasn't getting these jobs because I didn't really want them, and they could clearly see that. And that was sort of just making me further sort of depressed. I was losing confidence, all the rest of it. And I kind of just one day when my boss said to me, "I've got to let go two of my team members and make them redundant," basically. I came back home that night and I said to my wife, "Listen, it's a maverick idea, but I might be able to negotiate myself a good package out of this." And so I went back next day, said to my boss, "Why don't you take me instead?" And he said, "Well, okay." He said, "I still want to get rid of those two, but if you want to go as well, I'll take you off my books." They were all about cost cutting, so they were more than happy to get my wage off the bills. So I left there. I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. A little bit of money in my pocket. And we had some savings. So I felt okay from that perspective. I had 2 glorious months with my kids. It was a beautiful summer. And then I woke up in September and kind of, what am I doing? But I was, I didn't really have a plan. So I started consulting, and then I looked at a business. I started with a business with a friend of mine, which was a brilliant experience of, I guess this, if you're talking about mindset, it's a really, really, really valuable experience, and it's definitely affected the way I look at stuff going forward. The idea of putting something together yourself and then offering it out to the world is scary as hell, but something you need to go through, I think. And now I have this memory, this very distinct memory. So the day before, the business idea was health and fitness classes, but more of a health and fitness movement for people over 50. And actually, I was really targeting people in retirement. But I was told after we did a bit of research that everyone thinks they're 10 years younger than they actually are. So we targeted it to over 50s. The idea being keep people active as they get older, but a key part of staying healthy is also community and being around other people. So me and a friend of mine, so I'm obviously a lawyer and nothing to do with the fitness industry, but I teamed up with a mate of mine who's a personal trainer, and we looked at this, scoped out this idea. We got a website up and running, and then we went out and advertised, all very small scale. But I remember the day before we were about to sort of launch to the public and put it out on Facebook. Basically, we were starting with our Facebook friends because they all lived in the local neighborhood. We were going to go out from there. I was absolutely bricking it because I just thought people would be like, what the hell do you know about fitness? Yeah. What the hell do you know about, older people? And I was really, really, really nervous. I thought I was going to get ridiculed. I thought people wouldn't take me seriously. And it was absolutely the opposite. I cannot tell you the warm feeling I got from the reception we had when we put it out there.
Why do you think that is? I'm going to say, why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? Yeah, firstly, I think from an internal perspective, I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome and similar things to that, where you think people are trying to find you out or undermine you, or you don't have complete confidence in what you're doing or whatever. And social media can be a very terrifying place as well. I've only just sort of got into Twitter, and I don't massively like it, if I'm honest. I found Facebook actually a bit more gentle because my Facebook group is my friends and family and stuff. But you just, I certainly was misguidedly thinking people are going to pick holes in what I'm trying to do here. And actually, that's just not the case. And if you look at how you would treat someone else doing it, you'd be entirely supportive too. So I think it's really useful to remember that when you're doing things. Because, I just got so many old friends drop me a line saying, look, it's good on you for having a go. I think it's a great idea. I'm happy to share it amongst my community as well. Really, really kind of nice messages like that. And it kind of, you get a real buzz from it, actually, particularly when you're proven wrong mentally inside, you get a really nice feeling. And the reason I mention it specifically is because now I also I have a podcast of my own about the cannabis industry, which I'll come on to talk about. But and then this weekend I hosted some seminars at a conference, so I was sort of the host for the day. These are both new experiences I'd never gone through before, and previously would have been, petrified of. But that the Facebook example I just gave you, because I remember so vividly the emotions that I went through having gone through that, I now actually relish doing these sort of slightly scary things because I know that they're never going to be as bad as I think they are. And once I've broken through that barrier, it just gets easier. And so for me, a very, very important lesson along my journey. So I've slightly lost track here. So yeah, we launched this business, and it was really good experience to just get your hands dirty. We made loads of mistakes, and actually getting comfortable with that is a big thing. Coming from a legal background, but also an Asian background, these things are not sort of widely or openly talked about, making mistakes and learning from them, but they're really vital. And I was happy that at sort of pushing 40, I was able to start learning these things. We didn't decide to carry on the business together, but it certainly gave me the inspiration to do something else, and it gave me further confidence that returning to the corporate world on a kind of long-term basis was not what I wanted to do either. So after that, I got involved in a few different sort of startup businesses as more on a kind of advisory basis. Never quite finding what I wanted, but learning all the time. And then I would say, again, if I'm to pick out some kind of lessons, there came a point where I got a little bit depressed, I got a bit lost, I got a bit lazy, I didn't know what I was doing. It felt all a bit of a jumble. And I had stopped myself from going out and meeting people. I would say my high level contacts. I had listed them that I wanted to contact, but I hadn't gone out and spoken to them yet because I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do, which is, I'm sure, a very common phrase that you must hear during your podcast. But my thought process was that I didn't want to waste the opportunity I have with these high grade contacts. Didn't want to waste their time if I didn't know what I was doing or what I wanted to do. And that prevented me from doing most things, actually. And probably a large reason why I got into the sort of funk that I had, which lasted a couple of months, until I went on holiday. And, being on holiday is quite good because you're away from things. You're able to look at things objectively. But I looked at it and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go and meet these people. And actually what I realized from that is I'm never going to figure out what I want to do unless I meet people, which is the irony. So
especially if you're a brainstormer, because I do a lot of, I like to reflect and stuff, and then when I've come up with some options, I like to talk them through with people to refine those options. And I guess if you don't go out and talk to people, then that process is stymied.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more. I'm a big fan of talk therapy and have done it at various stages of my life, and not always because of a problem, mainly because it's just, I think it's an incredibly healthy thing to do. And I wasn't actually doing any talk therapy at the time, which was probably a reason for my stupor, and I missed it. And you're right, the idea of brainstorming and bouncing ideas off people is really valuable. And when I started doing that, I immediately started reaping the rewards. And not when we talk about rewards, and this will feature in other things I'll talk about, but it isn't about money or jobs or whatever. I'm talking about rewards in terms of learning more about yourself, learning more about your motivations, learning about where you want to head. Those sort of rewards are really, really invaluable. And those other things, the more kind of the more material, obvious things, which we all do need to a certain extent, they will come. But unless you sort of nail the bits up front, why are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? These sort of questions, and they're kind of ongoing learnings, right? You change, you grow, all of these things. So it's good to sort of keep an eye on that.
Yeah, one of the things that I believe is that no maverick is comfortable in the comfort zone.
Yeah.
The comfort zone is somewhere to go and rest for a minute. Not to live there.
Yeah.
It's like, I've done this thing, I need to pause. Okay, now what else is there?
No, I completely agree. I've undergone a fair philosophical transformation over the last 3 years, and it's loads of that. It's stopping kind of looking for a destination. I think to a lot of people, this idea of comfort zone, comfort zone now probably has a bit of a negative connotation, but it sounds quite nice in the words. and I think a lot of people strive to reach a destination, call it comfort zone, whatever it is. But actually, the whole trick is being comfortable with the process, because we're forever going through it. You can't keep the various variables stationary, because you might reach a personal level of, I don't know, you might sell your business, let's say, and make a load of money, but your family is growing up, your parents might be getting ill. You don't know what the kind of the external factors that might change in your life are. So if you reach a level of comfort, then you're not going to be very well equipped to, and reach a level of comfort where you're sort of just coasting. You're not going to be that adept at responding to changes which are inevitable.
Yes, I mean, when you was talking, I was seeing a couple of things. One, as almost like life is full of like spokes. It's almost like you start off in the comfort zone in the middle, and you go off down a journey, and then you reach another comfort spot, and then you dash off somewhere else. And I think like the comfort zone is, for me, somewhere where you rest, recuperate, reprise things, review what's happened in the past. So it's kind of like the comfort zone is where you consolidate the learning.
Yes.
And then you begin the preparation for the next part.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. Actually, there's a temporary aspect to it, isn't there? Like, as in, okay, cool, I'm going to take a breather here, assess where I am, and then figure out where the next sort of
and I think
focus should be. Just to go back, actually, I just remembered one thing that when we were doing this keeping people healthy, we looked at a lot of research around different aspects of what keeps people healthy, and it isn't the very Western idea of purging yourself of anything with flavor or fun that keeps you healthy. There's Mediterranean societies where they're not all bikini and surfboarding models. They have paunches. They live well into their hundreds. They eat lots of bread and carbohydrates and whatever else has been demonized. My point being is a key factor in long life is two key factors. One is a sense of community, so being surrounded by positive relationships. But the other one is a sense of purpose.
Yes.
And if you do reach the comfort zone for a long extended stay, you're probably lacking in that sense of purpose for whatever reason. And purpose can be a number of different things, whether it's spending more time with your children or grandchildren, or building a hut, or whatever it is. I think we all, to live healthily, need some kind of drive to do something. Sorry, I did interrupt you there, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
No, I think that is good. We all need purpose, and I was just thinking that's the difference, I suppose, between mavericks and conformists. Conformists are constantly looking for the comfort zone, and the mavericks are constantly looking to get out of it. Which is probably the tension between the two. You mentioned before that you had this kind of philosophical transformation. What was that transformation?
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me of that. I read a book called, and it just summed up exactly what you just said, called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is actually now, I think, not taught specifically in schools, but lots of teachers have taken the learnings from that book in how they approach education.
Yeah.
And it's very much based on the idea that everyone can improve on things. I'd always told myself that I wasn't creative, I wasn't imaginative, and that's why I ended up being a lawyer. So the idea of becoming an entrepreneur after that was fairly alien to me, because I was like, I'm not, I'm the type of guy that could run your company, but I'm not going to come up with the idea. And I convinced myself, I really had convinced myself that was my lot in life, and that was where I would remain. And that book really helped me to start thinking differently. And the growth mindset is essentially about challenging yourself, looking for things that you're not good at and seeing how you can get better at them. And the closed mindset is only exposing yourself to things that you know is a control thing, only exposing yourself to the things that you know that you're good at, and being petrified of things that you don't. So, the people that study relentlessly for tests who are great, but you put them in an aptitude test and they'd struggle, that kind of thing. That set me off on my journey of thinking about other things and gave me the courage to quit my job. The philosophical transformation has been mainly around being less outcome based. So one of the things that I didn't quite finish my story with, but one of the things that I do now is I looked at the cannabis sector first as a kind of investor, and then I sort of started learning more about medicinal cannabis and hemp and how misunderstood and maligned this plant has been. And through that, I decided to start a podcast because no one was really doing it in Europe. I'd never done any public performance in my life, and but I thought this would be a good idea, and I want to work in this industry. I want to start something. I'm not quite sure what that is. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and meet people. And there's no better way to do that than a podcast, as I'm sure you'll attest to. You meet so many interesting people, and you're able to have such great chats. And so that's what I've been doing. And the reason that this is a shift in philosophy is because I spend a few hundred quid on a month on producing this podcast and promoting it, etc. And I'm not getting any return from it, nor can I see any immediate return, direct return on it. But I am expanding my network, and things are coming in randomly that I can't, I could never predict or map out. And it is in massive part due to the fact that I'm not seeking or expecting a return on it. Lots of people, when they think about career change, they really want a safe bet to jump from one thing to another.
And there is none. Not in this day and age. There's no safe bets anymore.
There really isn't. And quite apart from the reason that you just don't know yourself until you do that. So you're going to change through that whole process. And you will and should pivot, several times from that initial move. So there is no real way that you can map that out. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are ways, but for the vast majority of us, just making that first step, your ultimate step, if there is such a thing, because this is a journey, but let's say one where you find an area that you want to stay in for a while, it's probably going to be 5 steps away from where you are right now. You're never going to get there unless you make that first step, unless you're prepared to make some mistakes in the steps that you make and learn from them and pivot and change and adapt accordingly. You won't get to that 5th step, let's say. So I've really, I now really value the idea of committing to a process and not expecting outcomes. And if you do, the things that I looked at when I thought starting the podcast, I was like, I like talking to people. I like meeting people. I like learning about stuff. I like what I hear about the cannabis industry. All of these things are good. So if I do it with commitment and endeavor, good things will come from it. And they have started happening as well. So that would be probably the biggest thing around the shift in philosophy. Before the show, I think we talked a bit about my philosophy. The other thing that really helped me, apart from the Carol Dweck book, was when I quit work and I was sort of, a man of leisure, let's say.
Was you a man at lunch?
A man at lunch, exactly. When I was a man of lunch, sorry. I looked around at a lot of my friends, and which is a really important aspect, actually. I had assumed a lot of things about a lot of people. And having that time out really allowed me to have the headspace and objectivity to look at things. And I looked at lots of my friends and I thought, no one has got it nailed. No one, right? Not, and that was a previous, misguided illusion that I'd been living under. I was like, oh, so-and-so, they've got a nice house, or they've got a nice car, or they've got an important job with an important title, they earn loads of money. Whatever the things are that you kind of think people have. Yeah, or... Yeah, so I guess the kind of more superficial things, let's say, materialistic things, were probably the things that we most immediately think to. So once I got over that, I started to look at actually, well, what's their quality of life? What's the quality of their relationships, and how much other stuff have they got to deal with, and how much stress effectively have they got to deal with? And when I started adding that into the mix, I was like, I don't really feel jealous of anybody. We've all got our own set of compromises that we deal with. And I'd stopped assuming that everyone else is living this better life. Social media is terrible for this. It really does.
Only perfect pictures that you see, isn't it?
Well, exactly. No one puts pictures up of the divorce they're going through. You know what I mean? It's these are the realities of the world. And, I've got some friends who earn tons of money, but, they work 80-hour weeks. We've got other friends who struggle to make enough money to, who seem more content in a lot of aspects, but they struggle to make enough money to live, which is also a different kind of stress. And so I was like, none of these things are perfect, and actually ridding yourself of assumption has really helped me to now feel more kind of self-defined. I'm not trying to live up to some other self-constructed idea of what other people are doing and are going through. And if I'm to offer a bit more analysis on the idea of assumption, I also then started to look at myself in not in a self-critical where people's inner critic can be very nasty and horrible. This was more about looking at myself in terms of attributes and what I could offer and bring. And this was particularly the case because I was trying to undergo a career and industry change. So I was looking at what can I offer other people other than my experience as a lawyer. And I started to see that I had assumed a lot of things about myself. So I'm naturally quite good with people. So I find it quite easy making friends and keeping contact with people. And I just assumed that everyone else was good at this as well. So I didn't see that as a skill. I just thought, I didn't think it had any value in what I was trying to do. So through sorry, I'm just really quickly finish. Through speaking to people, they said, look, this is quite a skill. Not everyone has this. And I was like, what? I just assumed everyone did. And it started to help me to look at what I can offer in a more, started to feel more proud about myself, but also, started to empower me a bit more that actually these are valuable things. I need to think about how I can sort of package that and use more of that in what I wanted to do, because that was actually a key driver in me stopping wanting to be a lawyer, because I was sat behind a desk drafting and negotiating over email, which is just horribly impersonal, and it wasn't using any of the skills I wanted or nor liked. And so, hearing this opinion of someone else to say, look, these skills that you undervalue that you have are based on assumptions that you made. And actually they're worthwhile exploring.
Yeah, I think you're totally correct. I do a lot of work actually with small businesses, looking at what the proposition is, i.e., if you take away all the functional things, what is it that you're really doing? What is the real skill? What's the real talent? And what is it that makes you different based on that? And I had a very similar thing when I left corporate life and I was looking for change. And I thought, what is it that I have to offer? Because I don't want to do what I was doing. So what do I do now? And I realised for me, it was the fact that I was highly insightful. I was very insightful. I asked great piercing questions and I could make connections very quick. And I was good at kind of the thinking aspects and the strategic aspects of things. And then I created my own job, as it were. And I remember when I first came out into the self-employed sphere and talking to people, and people say, no one will ever buy that because it isn't something, you don't have you're a coach or you're a this, you're trying to sell a skill. And I'm like, what's the problem? I refuse, like you said, I refuse to have your assumptions, I refuse to be defined by other people's interpretations, and things have worked out okay, and I think the more I embraced my uniqueness and said, I am a socialized maverick and I think in a very maverick way, and that in itself is valuable, then things were better. Because yes, like if you're a lawyer, you have functional skills and the ability to read legal text, you can understand complex things, you can make them, all those kind of things. Same with me, I understood HR, I understood operations, I had all these functional qualifications, and that doesn't go away, but then so has other people as well, because otherwise you're saying I'm better than everybody else because I've been doing it for longer, or you sort of say, actually, you're not going to find someone who thinks like me, and that's something that's valuable. My ability to
really valuable
way is what's missing in your company. You need to buy that, but you have to be, as you say, you need to be confident in that.
Well, I think that's what I picked up in what you were just saying. It's the confidence to be who you are, right? And also the confidence to realize that not everyone's going to like that, right?
That's true.
So, and it's not necessary for everyone to like. I mean, actually, I spent a lot of my life petrified of rejection and not being liked. That in certain situations, I really watered down my personality because, just to maximize or minimize the risk of that happening, and it didn't really serve me hugely well, because you just don't get noticed, and you don't
enjoy it either, do you?
You don't enjoy it either because you're not
alive.
You're pushing something down that's within you. And I found that, when I was starting to open up a bit more and be more myself, that the people that I want to work with will gravitate towards me, and the people that won't, which is great. It's a filtering process. So yeah, look, it's the assumption bit is a cornerstone for me.
You know what? I think it's so funny. It's like with my website, what I found is people were saying to me, oh, your website needs to be clearer, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. And I got to the point where I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to change the whole thing. It's just totally rubbish. And then I had other people who I actually were working with who said, I love your website, it's really clear, it speaks to me. And I suddenly realised the people who didn't like it were not the target audience, but the target audience loved it. So I was like, oh, I'm leaving it as it is. But that's the thing, it's just a case of you could be swayed by other people's opinions, and you need to look into what that opinion is based.
100%.
Yeah, because like my website is... it's confronting in the sense that it makes bold statements. It really talks to the maverick mindset, and that is uncomfortable for people who don't have that mindset or who can't see the value of it. But in itself, it's not like it's not an aggressive website, but it will say if you want to know how to get what you want, do this, which is exactly what a maverick wants to hear. But a conformist will look at it from the wrong perspective and say, "You try to manipulate people." No, it's not. It's just a maverick's mindset is tell me how to get to what I want.
Yes.
And I'm offering a clear pathway, and I'm like, that's what I want. Whereas conformists are more, it's impossible to have a clear pathway. So so it's like, no, it's not. It's really easy. Once you know where you're going, you just need to do it. Whereas other people can be like, no, life is just not that clear. And that's just the difference in mindset.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I entirely agree. I think you have to get comfortable with being able to have your brand. I mean, one of the things I learned when we were doing our fitness business was, yeah, again, having never done any of this before, the marketing side of things, we didn't want to offend anyone. And there's a phrase, trying to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to nobody, because there's no, it's so vanilla that people don't,
People can't recognise themselves anyway.
Yeah, there's no character or integrity to what you're doing. And again, that's largely down to fear, isn't it? It's fear that that you might get things wrong, but actually, it's totally fine now. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you could, I think we're almost to an end. I was just wondering if you could give one or two tips for somebody that is pondering a change from what's known. So they're pondering to venture out their comfort zone. What would you say that they should consider doing?
100%, and it's always my first is speak to people. Now, I would just speak to as many people as you can and talk to them openly. The more open you speak to people, the more you'll get back. Don't worry if you don't know what you want to do. Start identifying any aspects of the things you want to do. So if you like being behind a computer, that's one thing you add to your list. If you don't like being behind a computer, you want to be out and about, start with the most mundane factors that you like, and then start talking to people about them, because very, very rarely are conversations useless. In fact, I don't think they are. Either a conversation will take you in a direction that you hadn't thought about, or it will simply reinforce the ideas that you already have. So, and people get really scared of the idea of networking because they think of these horrible events where there's thousands of people and you're sort of stuck in the corner necking a bottle of wine because you're so nervous. Networking, to me, that is a small aspect of it. Networking to me was just tapping up all people I'd worked with who I enjoyed working with and going for a coffee with them and saying, look, let's have a catch up. And then through that, they would introduce me to people who they think I might find interesting. And, I cultivated a huge network of people just by that method. It's relatively time intensive. But if you're committed to making a change, then it's a really, really worthwhile thing. So the first thing I would say is, people, go and speak to people, and at some point, go to conferences that interest you, go to talks that interest you. You don't have to talk to anyone at the beginning, but I guarantee if you start going to a few of these things, you'll start to grow the courage to interact with them. And then, I guess I kind of alluded to it as well. It's journaling of any kind or keeping notes is really, really, really useful for all kinds of productivity, but also happiness and mental health perspectives. But just start taking, little notes on your phone, or if you like writing, you have a little book with you of things that you like, and it can be, like I said, it can be the mundane, or it could be the complex. So I really like designing video games. If you know that, great. But for most people who are just thinking, oh, I want to start looking for something else, you have to go slow and steady. So just start recording these things and you'll start to build up an idea of where you want to focus your efforts.
Cool, thank you. That's really good advice.
No worries.
Would you come back again at some point and talk about something different?
Yeah, absolutely love to. This has been really enjoyable. I'm usually the one that's interviewing, so I never get interviewed. It's quite enjoyable being on the other side, actually.
You never know what's going to be asked, isn't it? So it's a bit like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Judith.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Anuj as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.